Every crime leaves a trail, but not every trail leads answers. Here, we follow the cases that haunt, the mysteries that linger, and the truths buried in darkness. Welcome to Veil of Mysteries.
The deadly pact of two teenage killers. It began in a quiet suburban town where crime was rare, and life seemed routine. Parents felt safe letting their children ride their bikes down the streets, schools boasted strong academic reputations, and the community prided itself on being tight-knit. But beneath that surface of normalcy, two troubled teenagers were slowly forming a bond that would shake the town forever. A friendship forged in darkness. The story starts with Daniel and Lucas, both just 16. They weren't the most popular kids in school, but they found each other in their shared sense of alienation. Daniel was quiet, withdrawn, and often bullied. Lucas, on the other hand, was more charismatic but harbored violent fantasies he rarely shared. Together, they discovered something dark, an obsession with serial killers, unsolved crimes, and online forums where violence was glorified. Their friendship quickly grew into an echo chamber of twisted ideas. They began talking late into the night, trading stories of infamous killers, daring each other to imagine what it would be like to commit the perfect crime. At first, it seemed like fantasy. But soon, it became something more. One night, sitting in Lucas's room, the two teenagers whispered about their frustrations, their hatred for the people who mocked them, and their craving for power. That's when Lucas proposed the idea. What if we stop just talking about it? What if we prove we're different from everyone else? Daniel hesitated, but Lucas pressed on, suggesting a pact. They would each take part in a killing, sealing their bond forever. Neither of them would back out, and if one tried, the other promised to expose him. In their minds, this pact wasn't just about violence, it was about loyalty, secrecy, and creating a legacy no one would forget. Over the next several weeks, Daniel and Lucas meticulously prepared. They watched documentaries, studied police investigation techniques, and even mapped out areas of town where they believed they could strike without being caught. They wrote in notebooks, creating lists of potential victims, neighbors, classmates, even strangers. Their target eventually became a girl from school named Emily, someone both of them knew but who had never wronged them personally. To Daniel, Emily represented everything he felt he could never have: popularity, confidence, and friends. To Lucas, she was simply an opportunity, the perfect first victim. The night of terror. On a chilly evening, Emily agreed to meet Daniel near the park after he told her he had something important to confess. She never suspected anything. Daniel had always seemed shy, maybe even kind. But when Emily arrived, she wasn't alone. Lucas was hiding nearby with a knife. What followed was brutal, senseless, and chilling. Emily never stood a chance against the two boys who had lured her into a trap. Afterward, they buried her body in a shallow patch of woods, believing no one would ever find her. They even took a vow of silence, swearing never to speak of the crime to anyone else. For a while, life went back to normal, at least on the surface. But Daniel and Lucas were not as unshakable as they believed. Daniel struggled with guilt, haunted by nightmares of Emily's face. Lucas, on the other hand, seemed to thrive, boasting in cryptic ways online, hinting at what he had done. Investigators soon grew suspicious. Emily's disappearance sparked a massive search, and it wasn't long before rumors spread. Daniel, racked by guilt and paranoia, became the weak link. A friend noticed his strange behavior and tipped off police. When questioned, Daniel broke. The once tight-lipped teenager cracked under the weight of the secret, confessing everything. Lucas was arrested the same night, furious that Daniel had betrayed their pact. In court, the story shocked everyone. Two ordinary teenage boys, kids from good families, with no major criminal records, had orchestrated a chilling murder simply to prove their loyalty to each other. The judge called it one of the most disturbing cases of youth violence ever seen. Daniel was sentenced to decades in prison, while Lucas, deemed the mastermind, received life without parole. Their pact, meant to bind them forever, had instead destroyed their lives and shattered a community. Even years later, the town struggles with the memory. Parents warn their children about the dangers of dark influences online. Teachers remind students that isolation and obsession can lead to destructive choices. But perhaps the most haunting part is this: Daniel and Lucas weren't monsters from the start. They were teenagers, angry, lonely, and searching for meaning. In each other, they found not healing or support, but a mirror that reflected their darkest desires. Together, they stepped into a nightmare they could never escape.